Ready.
Okay.
Bloopers.
Welcome, everyone, back to the Flow podcast. My name is Joel Hart, and I'm thrilled today to be here, the special guest. And usually, as always, it's a good friend of mine, and today is no exception. With my guest, Mr. Javier ORDORICA. I always try to roll the R and get the authenticity there. He can correct me on how to pronounce his last name, but everyone that knows him probably knows him as Javi, or Havs if we're really close. But I'm excited today, as always, just to have a apostolic conversation with an individual who I went to Bible college with. I believe this is a man of God and a man of prayer. And so we are going to just dive in and do our best to go with the flow. And so, Javi, welcome to the flow.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here on the Flow podcast. I remember when you first started it. I think Andre was your first guest, and he told me a little bit about it, and I was like, man, it'd be cool to be on there. And here we are today, a couple years later. I think it's been 2 years maybe
Yeah,
that you've had
which is
this,
hard
but
to believe.
I know, right? What I'm excited to just be a little part of it and whatnot. So thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, of course, dude. I've wanted to. I feel like I even mentioned it probably a year ago, but I've wanted to have you on and have a conversation for a long time, and uh, just my consistency with the planning and the preparation side of the podcast has been lacking. So we're working on that, and we're making it happen. We're here. So thank you again. So if you've read the title, hopefully it's done its job and has it piqued your interest if you're a listener. And it may change a little bit from what we have written down now, but today we're going to talk about potential. And me and Javi we've been talking about this for a couple days now, and just some different things that have been going on in our lives personally that we might touch on and reference. But one of those things specifically is when it comes to potential and knowing that there's a potential for something to happen, or a change or whatever it may be. There's oftentimes the risk of what we're calling paralysis, the potential for paralysis. And I kind of had a funny title. It was Avoiding the Potential Paralysis of Potential. So when you know that you have a potential in a certain area, not allowing yourself to freeze up and just stop doing all the things that you know you should be doing, and you just kind of become idle waiting for that potential thing to happen. And that's it's easy to do, something that as me and Javi have been talking, both of us have experienced. And so I'm going to turn it to him here in a moment to kind of define what how he would define paralysis of potential, or whatever we're going to call it. But so I did some studying here. I'm going to kind of give just lay a quick foundation of potential. So, of course, first thing I did was search the scripture for the word potential, and didn't find it in there. But there's so many ideas that came to mind, which we'll begin to talk about, of how potential is a biblical concept. And one of the words that I found that was pretty cool actually was when I was searching for potential, it brought up this word in the Greek that means gold, and the way it was is used is in the purchasing power of that gold, and that purchasing power is it's the ability to purchase something. So it's the potential that you have to acquire something or purchase something when you have gold. So keep that in mind. Money can be a potential because it can lead to many things. So then, kind of the dictionary definition of potential is having or showing the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. Uh, and that's the adjective form. And then the noun form of potential is it's a dormant quality or qualities or abilities that may be developed and lead to future success or usefulness. So I think most people can relate with that. Something that they know is there that's potential. So kind of kicking it to you here, Javi, for your personal experience, and just as we've been thinking about this and developing this, how would you define either potential in and of itself, or the full idea of potential paralysis?
Um, for myself, I would say that potential. I feel like you could give a bunch of different definitions because I mean we all have our own stories and our own different things that we go through in life. So for me, potential might mean one thing, but for somebody else, it might mean the other. But
Yeah.
your definition was like really spot on. And for myself, hearing what you had to say about potential, the capacity to become or develop, for
Yeah.
myself, I would say the ability to become,
Hmm.
um, especially because every single one of us, you and myself, whoever's going to listen to this, pretty much every single person in this world was born with potential to become something great, whatever it may be. And it doesn't just have to be spiritual. Um, it
Yeah.
could be, in your workplace, you have this ability inside of you to want more, right? And so for me, the a definition of potential for myself would be the ability to become. And obviously paralysis, if you've ever dealt with paralysis, sleep paralysis, you
Yeah.
wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like you can't move,
Hmm.
and put it into perspective of potential, you feel like you have this great ability to become something. Um, but sometimes you get stuck in the moment or in the
Right.
feeling of, man, I don't think I can do this. That's the very same thing as, when you're sleeping and you're trying to move around, trying to get up, you feel like, whatever's going on. And so for me, the paralysis of potential would be being stuck in the ability to become.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. So one of the notes I had here and is regarding the life of Joseph in Scripture, and something we can maybe talk about. Um, so I had a note that our idea of potential, and it's pretty cool because when I was looking at the definition, one of the kind of synonyms or similar words for potential, it was promise, and and I thought that was pretty cool because I had kind of seen that in scripture before, looking at just the Webster's dictionary definition, and the thought I had was how potential is often tied to promise, especially promises from the Lord, that us as Christians we hold on to, because we know that a promise is like a seed that in His time is gonna gonna flourish. And so, regarding Joseph, that seed, it seemed like it had become dormant, and I think that's kind of what, in a way, we're gonna try to talk about and deal with here is when you know that you have, whether it's a promise, a word from the Lord, a dream, however you define it, something that makes you aware of your potential. How do you deal with the the feelings like no doubt that Joseph had? How do you deal with those feelings of that sleep paralysis type of thing where you feel stuck in your current situation? And just real quick for myself, like what I've often struggled with is constantly only looking to the future, and so not living to the fullness of my ability in the present, and that
Mm.
kind of brings about some of this kind of paralysis or dormants. Uh, and so I know for you, you have a lot of personal things, and some things I even came to mind in thinking about you that I thought to ask. But for you, how have you in your current season of life, post Bible college, you've been done with school for a year and kind of in a maybe a middle season or season of wondering what's next. How have you dealt with the understanding that there's a potential there, but not knowing when it's going to happen?
Oh man, there's a lot to say with that. First I will say something about Joseph. Is like looking at his life, everything that he went through, even before being, locked up in a dungeon. Um, that I'm pretty sure he felt already that his brothers were going to betray him, and yet he still trusted. He knew what was to come in his life. He didn't know when it was going to come. He didn't know what he was going to have to go through, um, but yet he trusted and he was patient, and in spite of everything he went through, he held on. And so,
Yeah.
um, you know, coming out of Bible college, I'm sure you felt this too. I'm sure every single Bible college student feels this when they're done with college. Hey man, I'm ready for ministry.
Yeah.
God's the doors are about to open. I completed 4 years. We had so many prayer meetings. God just completely wrecked my life. He tore it all apart, and he built it back up in 4 years. And so, as soon as I'm done, full-time evangelist, assistant pastor, and all these, the fivefold ministry, that's what
Yeah.
majority of students have in their mind. But the reality of it is, it's not. I won't say for everyone, because there are some students, you know, that go to Bible college and do come out and go full-time ministry. But for the majority of them, of us, that's not the reality. And so a lot
Right.
of us face this very thing that we're talking about today. Um, but for myself, how did I deal with it? Um, First, I came home and it was kind of hard because I had a brand new pastor and I
Mm.
didn't really know him that well. And we had talked, and I was like, he was asking me what I felt, was going to happen in my life, and I was like, I really feel called to the evangelistic field. And to be honest, the first thing he said, he's like, "Hey, man, I'll help you get there." And I was going on tour, um, and so I was like, "Okay, I'm going on tour. I'll have these connections." And when I was trying to figure things out in my flesh, right?
Right.
And I had remember what my pastor said, come home and I'll help you get ready. And, you're going to be an evangelist. He pretty much confirmed it. And so in my mind, I had this thinking of, man, once I'm done with tour, I'm going to go home. I'm going to get licensed. And right away, you know, I'm going to start evangelizing,
Right.
you know, and a year later, my life is completely different. I still, feel that I will someday evangelize, but in the season that I am in right now, I've had to completely trust God, um, and give everything to Him, um,
Right.
to avoid that paralysis, of being stuck in my potential, because I know for myself there is some things that I know is going to happen. Sometimes you see the will of God as like being very clear, and sometimes it's fuzzy, because
Yeah.
you see the parameter of it, but you don't see the fullness of what it is that you're going to do. And
Yeah.
so I see some of the things clearly of what I'm going to do, and some of them are a little fuzzy. And so avoiding that, I've gotten close to my pastor. I've had his voice in my life. I've kept him close. I've let him speak into my life. I've had to learn how to take the response, no, you're not ready for that.
Yeah.
Um, and I've realized in the year's time that what my pastor meant by, hey, I'm going to get you ready for that was he's got to groom me. There's some things that not only is he got to groom me, but there's some things still that I deal with that God's got to get out of me, before I can even step into that ministry that God has for me. And not to say that I'm not in ministry right now, because I am doing ministry with my local
Yeah.
church.
Right.
And that's a whole nother story, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's only, like I said, that was the fuzziness that I seen in the will of God. That wasn't the clear thing that I saw in a sense of evangelizing. But
Hmm.
so to answer your question, how have I kept from avoiding the potential of paralysis or the paralysis of potential? I've kept my pastor close to me.
Mm.
He's the first
That's good.
voice that I listen to, not only whenever we're there at the church on a weekday, but when he's preaching, I'm listening to the words, I'm taking notes, I'm studying his preaching.
Yeah.
Sometimes my
Yeah.
pastor he's in pastor mode. Sometimes he's in evangelistic mode. And recently I've seen him operate in the prophetic, and so to
Right.
see those
Wow.
things, it's helped me um, stay still in this moment, and waiting on God for His perfect timing to avoid that paralysis. And I'll say this last thing because I can talk forever, but
That's good.
um, helping um, avoid that has also come with a bunch of trials.
Hmm.
It's kept me on my feet, and so that's just kind of my personal experience in a sense of the spiritual aspect. There's a lot of things that I've gone through in life as well, and just in life, growing up and whatnot, high school, making decisions. um, all this can bleed into any area of life, and so that would be my uh, input.
That's good. Yeah, that's so good. I love the emphasis there that you said and what you've done and putting your pastor's voice first. I think that's crucial. And having the intentionality of getting close to him too and learning from him and um, being able to receive no as an answer, um, and knowing too like that is preparation, and he's sticking true to his word of I'm going to help you get there to evangelizing. But the path to there probably looks a little different than we would expect, and I know for myself I can definitely say that's true for me too. And the path has looked very different, and it brings a lot of frustration at times. But I think, man, that's good. So, kind of segueing with that, just sort of back to Joseph. So, and we have a lot of notes here for those listening, but and so I'm sort of trying to navigate those, but also I guess go with the flow as is our as is our mantra. And so in thinking of Joseph, probably one of my favorite stories in the Bible, as I'm sure is many, and also it's been probably one of the most like uh, relevant stories for myself uh, since I've been out of Bible college the last 2 years. Uh, is it only two? Yeah, 2 years. Um, just some key things, key words, and ministry and times where it's continually come back to me. So I guess a question I have for you, and you touched on it a little bit, but like in thinking of Joseph's life and the preparation for his promise, the dreams that he had that he knew were from the Lord, those things that were his potential, like we're talking about. With each stage, at times it seemed like no doubt that he was probably going further from the favor of God or from the plan of God. No one who I'm sure who has a dream from the Lord expects to end up in a pit and be put there by their brothers,
Not
and
me.
right, and then to go into a place of slavery, and earn the favor of man again, but then to end up in prison by false accusation. And just each stage, we know the story. And of course, he just continued to succeed because he continued to allow those things to prepare him for the next thing, even without knowing for sure what the next thing is. So, I guess my question for you, and again, you kind of already touched on it. So, if maybe you expound on it some, but what are some more of the things now that you're in the season and you're kind of having this understanding of, okay, this is all preparation, and it's not, I'm not out of the will of God because I'm not evangelizing at the moment. What are some key things that you have implemented or done, or doing, in being deliberate in your preparation for the potential that you feel?
So for Joseph, he while he was in that dungeon, he was interpreting dreams.
Yeah.
When there was only a couple of them in there, not a whole crowd was seeing them, seeing what God was using him to do. Nobody was around, but he was still faithful to do
Mm-hmm.
the things behind the scene. And so for myself, preparation right now, I'm reading. I'm reading books to gain knowledge, because stopping right there, God can only use you to minister according to what you know. And
That's
so
right.
when that time comes that my pastor's like, okay, I feel like you're ready to evangelize, and doors start opening, if in this season that God's preparing me, I'm not giving myself over to um, reading, not only reading books, but reading the word. I
Yeah.
put that above anything else.
Mm-hmm.
um, Reading the word, prayer, obviously fasting, allowing myself to be in a position for God to speak to me. Because if I'm not, if every aspect of my life, every arena of my life is not aligned with God for Him to speak to me, it my equilibrium in the spirit's going to be off. And what good is someone, uh, not that they're not good, but someone that their equilibrium is off. They can't walk right. you
Mm.
know they're
Yeah.
going to be walking around with their head maybe
Yeah.
sideways. That
Unbalanced.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so what good is it for me if I'm not giving everything to God um in this season of preparation? So reading the word, reading books, finding books on prayer, fasting, the prophetic, whatever I could get my hands on. uh I'm trying to read right now. And obviously, I already touched on, being close to my pastor, um, is something that I'm using as preparation, because my pastor, he's a young man. I think he's 40, gonna turn 40. I hope if he listens to this, he doesn't rebuke me.
He forgives you.
But yeah, but that's a young pastor, but he's
Yeah.
been through a lot in his life and in his ministry. He's opened up to the church about a lot of stuff that he's went through as a minister, a bunch of hurt from other ministers, pastors
Yeah.
that he was under, and thank God that they have a great relationship now. But there, even in his life, there was things he had to go through
Mm.
to get to where he's at today. And
Yeah.
so I'm I wasn't perfect with this when I got straight home, because I didn't really know him and I was kind of timid of him.
Right.
So I kind of kept my distance. But now, as the time's gone on, we've gotten a relationship. And so in my season of preparation, I'm getting as close to my pastor as I can. If he asked me to go out with him, if he asked me to run an errand for him, if he asked me to go have lunch with him, whatever it is he asked me to do, I'm trying to be there,
Yeah.
because anytime that I can be with my pastor, I know he's gonna say something that can benefit me in my walk with God.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of everything he's been through, and that's my shepherd. He's the one that's looking out for my soul. And so if say a sheep is far out in the pasture, and his shepherd is with the other sheep, and he won't come over here, the other sheep won't come to the flock to be fed when it's feeding time, what's going to happen? That either that sheep's going to die, or that shepherd's going to have to go out and get him.
Yeah.
But who wants to be a burden to their pastor, to be so distant that he has to always come looking for you and whatnot? And
Hmm.
so
That's good.
those two things are one of the two of the main things that I'm doing right now to um, get ready, for what God
Yeah.
has whenever that time comes, and avoiding, paralysis
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
season. So,
Man, that's awesome. So just kind of a little, I guess, rabbit trail here. We'll get back on topic, but is there any specific books that you've found or that you're reading currently that you would kind of plug or reference right now?
oh man, Revival Praying by Leonard Ravenhill.
Yeah,
Great book.
that's a good one.
Um, I found it. So our church has in the foyer, it has a bookshelf, and they have a couple books, and I was looking through them, and I was like, man, why is this book here? It looks like it'd be a good book. I've never read it.
Yeah.
And so I texted our one of the ministers on staff, and I asked, I was like, hey, can I take this and read it? And he was like, yeah, sure. And so um, one thing that he says in there is prayer is the leading path to revival. And so,
Right.
obviously without prayer, you can do things on your own, but doing something in the flesh on your own accord and your own will, it's only going to get you so far. And so that's one of the books that have really have been challenging me lately. Um, I've been reading for about a week and a half, and so I'm
That's a
trying
good
to take
one.
it slow,
Hmm.
and digest it. Another one by Brother Eli Hernandez. I forgot the name of it, but there's
Mm,
a chapter in there on humility,
yeah.
and that has just been, man, killing me.
Yeah.
It's been breaking me, realizing that humility is such an important factor in a minister's life. And I would
Hmm.
even say, not even just a minister's, but in every single person's life, whether you're in
Right.
church or not.
Yeah.
Being humble will take you a lot of far ways in life.
Yeah.
So those are the two books
That's a
um,
good one. Is that
that
one
have been challenging me.
A World Beyond the Stars?
By Brother Hernandez.
Brother
Is
Hernandez?
that the book that he released, that his church
It was,
released after he passed?
yeah. It's
Okay,
like
then yeah.
pretty like real small but and blue. Is it that one?
I think it's a green cover.
Oh, yep. I know that one too. I can't remember the name either.
I have it here with me. Bro, that's another thing. I have so many books. I told you this
Yeah.
before. I
Yeah.
pick up so many books and I don't read them, and I'm trying to get in the habit of sticking to a book and finishing it.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
one of the
I
books I haven't
understand.
finished, but
That's a good one.
yeah,
I'll have to because I have that one too, so I'll at least try to remember to write down the title and put it in the description for anyone listening who's interested because yeah, I would definitely recommend that one too. Something and this isn't helped me necessarily read more, but just kind of on the subject of books, something I've done this year new because I've gotten so many new books just this year alone as well, and I've made, I don't know if you can see it here, probably not, but essentially it's just a checklist of all
yeah,
of the new books that I have and the books that I want to get to. And so it's just a little bit of a better visual of what I want to get to than looking at them all on the bookshelf.
yeah,
And I'm such a checklist person anyway, so it's pretty cool once you check it off on here, then it like drops to the bottom of the list and just feel all accomplished and and it kind of motivates me a little bit too to work to get through the book just so I can check it off.
yeah.
But
The book is
anyway.
called Maintaining Divine Operation by
Okay.
Brother Hernandez. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So anyone listening, I'd recommend that one too. So, maintaining divine operation. And that one is it's cool because he was teaching the youth group at the church, and it's written in a way like verbatim of the way that he spoke it, right?
Yeah.
And I found that pretty cool. Like you can hear him when you're reading it, you can literally hear him like saying every word. So
Yeah.
it
It's
makes
like
it
he's
cool.
speaking straight to you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So okay, so that was just a quick little but worthwhile rabbit trail there. So two great book recommendations, which just by chance I've happened to read both those too, um, and so I would second those recommendations to anyone looking for books. Um, so kind of circling back to those things that you mentioned you're doing now in preparation, and the books being one, which this year I've probably been reading more this year than ever. Besides maybe when I was in school, which I didn't even read too much when I was in school. Um, Hopefully none of the professors listen. But then you also talked about reading books, and then I thought it was so cool like how you're learning from your pastor, and not only what he's doing now but also some of the things that he has went through um, and experienced. And I think that's huge, following the examples that have gone before us, and hopefully trying to learn from things that they've went through so that we don't have to go through those same things in as
Yeah.
similar of a way. So, so follow up question on that. Um, you talked about the consistency and doing the things that you know to do, and this one may be kind of difficult to answer, but I'll just throw it out there anyway. So regarding this potential that we're talking about, besides those things that we've already said, what are some ways, maybe looking forward or even now, or some key things that you think are important for, in a sense, for unlocking uh, that potential that is there inside of you?
Oh man, there's a couple things that come to mind when you say that. Obviously, there's some like practical things that you could do to um, unlocking that potential. Say for myself, in high school, I had middle school and high school. So 7 years I took wood shop, and I had become really good with working with wood. We
Mm.
built dog houses, just little things. We ran electrical through it, and so I had these different things that I could bring to the table. But my senior year, I had tested out of the woodworking part of the class, so I couldn't take any more wood shop classes, and
Oh
so I
man.
was like, well, might as well take welding, and
Yeah.
so my dad was a welder for a little bit in his life, um, in his younger ages. And so I was like, hey, maybe this is something I could follow. My dad was a good welder. And honestly, the first time I laid a line down, bro, it was great. My teacher was impressed.
Oh
And I
wow.
started thinking the other day, I was like, man, that was like, I had potential in that, you
Yeah.
know, but I didn't pursue it.
Mm.
um,
Right.
that 1 year of my senior year in high school, I gave everything to it. Um, I would stay after a little bit. My mom worked in the office, and so I would stay after some days to just practice a little more of the welding. And by the end of the year, my teacher was like, "Hey, there's this competition coming up. I want you to go to it. You do great." Um, but I say all that to say this. Whatever you feel that you have potential in order to unlock it, you've got to give it everything.
Yeah.
You can't just allow it to be something in your mind, but you've got to, whatever it takes, whether it's, there's a quote, the slow and steady wins the race. You don't
Yeah.
have to
So
go,
true.
you know, say for me, I didn't have to become a great welder in 2 days. I knew it was going to take time. And so I just gave every time I went into class, I would, try and practice. I would do whatever I can to become better. Um, but saying that, practice makes perfect. And so unlocking that, you've got to give whatever that area of your life, it is, whether it's something you're doing for God, or it's at your work, you've got to give it everything. And so unlocking um, potential, you've got to have passion
Mm,
for that
right.
thing that you feel can be unlocked in your life.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I see that being the case for sure. And just as you're talking about some of those skills that you were involved in, it makes me think back across my life different because I feel like I've always been sort of a jack of all trades and but never mastering any one thing,
Yeah.
as the saying kind of goes, which is cool in some sense, like having a little bit of knowledge in a broad amount of things. But getting to that point where you hone in on this one thing that you decide, okay, this is what I'm gonna be passionate about and pursue the pursuit, and the diligence there is real crucial. And even just this morning, I was doing a keyword search in scripture on the word diligence, and a bunch of scriptures in Proverbs and even Psalms that talk about the difference between diligence and slothfulness, and how the diligent one is going to be one that has promotion and has increase in their wealth and the things that they pursue, and the opposite of that is not. They're going to be poor. And so I think you said it even at the beginning earlier when it comes to potential, how it not only applies to in the spiritual, but and I think that's true, but I think because it's a spiritual principle, I think regardless of whether someone's doing it in a spiritual sense, it's a spiritual principle, so it's going to apply in the natural too.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of speaking to where you are now, and it's funny because this points back to Joseph again, and and we would maybe use the term once his potential was realized, and he received that promotion. Then he was put in the place of second in command, and it seems like, okay, this is what it's all been for, all been leading up to. I guess, speaking to you, what are some things that you've maybe recently seen where you realize, okay, maybe this area is the pit, or this area is the dungeon, but this area too, even if it's a small thing, is maybe the promotion, or a form of the promotion. Have you seen in kind of your current season some of those real stages?
Um, yes, I have. Before I go into that, there's a quote by Albert Einstein. I'm sure some of us heard. It goes like this: "The future is an unknown, but a somewhat predictable unknown. To look to the future, we must first look back upon the past. That is where the seeds of the future were planted." And
Hmm,
so,
that's
looking at
good.
my life right now, where I'm at, and the things that is doing in my life right now, I had to look back over the past year and see what God was doing in my life then, in those seasons of frustration.
Yeah.
Because if I'm honest, coming out of Bible college, like I said, I thought I was ready, and then I realized that I wasn't, because there were some things that God was still working on
Mm,
inside of me and taking out and planning, and some of those seasons I got frustrated in, and I wanted to quit some of the times, like, man, God, I feel like I'm giving everything and nothing's happening, and one of the times that I can look back on, um, is when I first came home. When I met my pastor, obviously we talked, and I think I preached and teach probably a good 5 or 6 times in 2 months, and I was like, okay, I'm getting used to this.
yeah.
This is probably, I'm fresh from Bible college. My pastor's probably gonna want to use me, And suddenly it stopped, and there was no ministry,
Right.
there was nothing. It was just
Mm-hmm.
me and God, God breaking me. And I felt like I was just in that pit.
Yeah.
Um, I felt like I was alone. Sometimes I didn't feel like God was even talking. I was reading the word, and I was like, okay, God, a lot of people say they can't hear your voice, but it's because they're not reading the word. But I'm reading your word and I'm not hearing anything. It's
Yeah.
just, I could
Yeah.
hear a cricket. And so I can look back and, that season of silence where God was just silent in my life, was very ordained by God, because in that season I had to realize that I don't do this for a reaction from God. I'm doing this because this is a commandment for one. And this is nothing compared to what God did for me when he went to Calvary. Took the whips on his back, and they mocked him. They gave him vinegar to drink, and that he hung there gasping for air. And I realized that during that season of it being silent, and I was getting frustrated, that what I do in my private life, in my prayer life, is more important to God than me grabbing a mic and speaking the word of God.
Yeah.
So I had to realize in that season of frustration and silence that relationship with God is so much more than we even think it is. We
Mm-hmm.
can get so caught up in the ministry that we forget about our relationship with God. And so,
Yeah.
that season of life, I look back today and I thank God for it, because without it, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now,
Yeah.
with what God's doing.
That's good. Yeah. That's so true. You can always so quickly lose sight of the fact that there's purpose. It's kind of a cliche saying, but there's purpose in the process. And for Joseph, and even sometimes for us, it feels like the pit and the prison is pointless. But then it's always kind of funny too, because and I actually just experienced this recently, with an area of promotion, kind of the we could say the realization of potential. Which what's funny is we've been preparing for this topic, and just yesterday, an individual on my job made a statement to me, and the statement within that statement about me, they said something regarding untapped potential. And I just kind of chuckled reading that, like, man, that's exactly what I've been thinking about, and what we're talking about and planning for. And so I've seen this area of promotion, and it's in this field, of something I'm really passionate about. And it just caused me to have flashbacks of so much of my life where I've been doing things thinking it's only because I enjoyed it, or only to, be creative or whatever. And then it was like in a moment of transition and the timing of God aligning with where I'm at, He caused me to realize every single thing, as small as it may have been, was preparation. And again, it's kind of a smaller thing to me because it's a secular job, but it makes me realize God cares about that as well, and uses it for part of His plan. So
Yeah. You said something about looking back, and you've always had that passion for it. Um, Passion won't let you live in the past, you know. And so, with your
mm,
promotion, you had that passion a long time ago, and you look back and you realize that passion was there, and so that passion was is what really drove you to apply for something new. Um,
yeah, yeah,
Potential is the thing that allows you to live in the past. Potential doesn't want you to really, break out. That's
hmm,
why we've got to break out of it. Potential isn't going to do that on its own. It's got to be something that we desire. And so I think that where there is desire, there's going to be a passion. And where there's
Mm,
passion, there's going to be growth.
right. That's good. That's so good. Well, this has been a great conversation on this topic. I just realized that my little recording tool here doesn't isn't showing me length of time anymore. So I don't know how long we've been going, but as we as we kind of begin to wrap up here, I want to give you the opportunity, just whether it's to and I this is one of the reasons. So it always becomes a time of reflecting for me when it gets to graduation season, and especially when it's still friends of ours at school who are graduating. And I always get real sentimental and thinking about that season. And but then it's always kind of like a new group that I realize, okay, now they're coming into my season now. And so having the awareness and the sensitivity to be able to help them with the things that I've experienced, if possible in any way. Like I want to be available, and be there as a support. Like, hey, it's not gonna be all easy and all roses once you come into this new season. But like you talked about with your pastor, there's always someone there who's experienced something similar, that we can relate with, and that will help us in support. So just kind of turning it to you in closing here. What for people, whether it's friends of ours coming out of school, or anyone who may listen to this, who's in a season of maybe not yet at that point of promotion, or the realization of potential, what would be some words of encouragement that you would give, and just some things to kind of close this out, of encouragement and support, or direction that you would provide?
Um, Man, that you saying you have like memories of graduating. Some of our friends are graduating next week, and so
Right.
I like right now I'm kind of reliving. It was just a year ago, and I was trying to figure things out. What am I gonna do? What is when are the doors gonna open? And so if I could just say like something to them, my friends, whoever listens to this, whether you're graduating secular college, Bible college, high school, whatever you're doing, like entering this next season of your life, be willing to submit to your pastor, be willing to listen to your pastor, be willing to be there for your pastor. Um, Learn to be a servant. Learn to
Yeah.
learn to hear the word no. Don't get mad when you know the pastor says no. Something else that I would say to them is whatever you feel called to do, become passionate about it. Don't don't just be passionate on Sundays and Wednesdays when you're at church and the altar, working the altars, but be passionate about it on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Be passionate about it 7 days a week. Whatever you can do to better yourself, uh, and aligning yourself with God, align yourself with Him so that God can speak to you, so God can pull things from you. Because believe it or not, uh, we may not ever be ready to step into something, but we can always align ourselves with God so He can pull and He can plant, so He can pull and He can plant. No matter
Yeah.
if you become an evangelist right after, no matter if you become an assistant pastor right after, if you do, this still applies to you. You still
Right.
got to align
Right.
yourself with God so that He can plant and He can pull, because we can always become better. And ending this conversation and tagging along with that, but on the opposite end, what happens if you don't do those things? We can look at the story of Joseph. Look at his brothers.
Mm.
Um, um, they lived in Shechem, and that was that's the land of blessing. That was land that was given to Israel, later on. Um, but why did his brothers wander off from Shechem, looking for another pasture for the sheep?
Mm,
That those sheep had everything they needed. Their dad Jacob wasn't some ignorant man that was like, okay, we're gonna plant right here, we're gonna live right here, but we're not gonna have pasture for our sheep, we're not gonna have grass for our sheep, we're not gonna have water. He had everything. The father had everything that they needed right there. But those brothers became jealous, and they didn't realize that they had potential themselves. They wanted to ruin somebody else's potential,
mm,
Joseph.
wow.
And so they became so jealous over Joseph, which caused them to do things that they shouldn't have done. They
Yeah.
wandered off to Dothan. That's a
Mm,
hillside. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's a hillside. It's dry land. It doesn't have much to offer.
hmm.
Sheep have no business living there.
Right. Wow.
Had Joseph's brothers realized their own potential and aligned themselves with their own father, no matter if Joseph was supposed to become whatever he was going to do in life, they had no business ruining that because God could have done something else with them.
Mm,
But they became so jealous, and they couldn't hear the own words of their father, that they wandered off to Dothan. And I heard a minister say this, that he was looking up the definition of Dothan, and it wouldn't come up. There wasn't a definition, and he said, "This sermon won't be finished until I have a definition for Dothan." And he was like, it was just checking his spirit that God was like, "Don't you see it, Dothan? There's no meaning for Dothan.
wow.
If you don't align yourself with God, if you don't align yourself with your pastor and get those things out of your heart that you don't even realize are there right now entering this next season, you're going to end up in Dothan. You're going to
Mm,
ruin the will of God for your life, and not only for your own life, but you're going to ruin the will of God for your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad. You're going to end up in a land that's so dry that you're going to die there." And so, if I could say anything to anyone listening, whether you're graduating, going into your summer at COC, it can get lonely, but allow your pastor to be that voice in your life and allow God to speak and still continue to plant and pull, plant and pull. And so that would be my thing, my whatever you want to say, uh, for graduates entering the season of life. Don't become Joseph's brothers and end up in Dothan.